up here. We're coming alive all over the place. This is good. Let me hit my double check my LinkedIn side here to make sure we're live there. If you guys are just now coming in, let us know where you're signing in from, what city, what state, what country. It does look like we're actually live on LinkedIn, which is great. That's fantastic. A lot of folks are already here. We want to thank you for being here, and welcome to Thursday Roundtable. So we're here once again. Now, we've had some familiar faces here because they were actually with us a couple of weeks ago. We had a little bit of difficulties with our connection with my technical stuff, but I think we're good. I think we're good today. And let us know in the comments. Let us know if you can hear us and you can see us properly. We want to make sure that's working well for you. We want to make sure your time is well spent here. So I want to definitely appreciate Hayden's coming in. Thank you for being here, Isabella. We have Nikki. She says, yeah, oh, and yes, you are on the right side. I'm reading it now. She says, waiting for the broadcast to start. We have started. So thank you very much. Sharon Doctor, I'm waiting for the event to start. Yes, we're here. Thank you, Nikki, and thanks for Sharon for being here. And let me go ahead and welcome both of my guests. I have in the middle of the screen, we have Miss Michelle Dubner. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And then we also have Mr. Glenn Powell. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here again.
Yes. Good to be here. Good to be seen. And as I say often to people, it's better to be seen than viewed. So I'm thankful that we all could make it here today. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to hit refresh on my comments. Those of you who are just now chiming in, let us know where you're coming in from, what city, what state, what country. We're talking about people or culture. Where do we start? Where do we kind of build that conversation? We talked about some of it the last time, but I really kind of want us to start as if we're starting with ground zero because I really want us to get into this, kind of set the stage for what we're talking about. What's most important when we're looking at either transforming or even building an organization? Is it the people or the culture? So let's let you start with that. Michelle, what's your take on this? Is it the people or the culture that matters?
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here also again. And, this is a great question. People or culture. It, Most people think that people come first, and in most cases they do, but what makes the culture? It's the people that make the culture. And it's the culture that influences the people to make them even better. So if you're talking about an organization and work environment, I'm one that's going to say it's the culture that really comes first because it makes the people. I know that when you when you talk about HR and talent acquisition, you look for the people first. But when you talk about management and organizational improvement, it's really the culture. The culture makes the people.
Okay, appreciate that. Now, so how about you, Glenn? Where do you come at on this subject?
I think the question that every leader asks himself is, how can I make this organization better? And so that question comes up, do I spend my time working on the culture, or do I take a look at the features, people, and talent? I think that the people comes first. But let me qualify that by saying it's really the leader. The leader of the organization really makes the biggest impact, because the leader is the one who sets the tone for the organization. Once you have a good leader, you will have great other great people wanting to join that leader in the organization. And the leader also identifies the values that are important to the organization. Values create the culture. And so when you talk about one or the other, I think you first have to have a dynamic and visionary leader. I think you have to have a value system that appreciates the value that people have. And then I think there you'll have the people wanting to join the group and move with the organization.
Makes sense.
Well,
Yeah. Okay. So those are the comments. Let us know what you're thinking. Um, Okay, now they're saying, okay, let's make sure that you guys can see us. I see Jenna Lynn. She says, "Did we find anything? I have no other link either." You're in the right place. I'm seeing us live. So if you can, let us know. Comment back again and make sure you can see us because I'm able to actually see us right on LinkedIn. Okay, so as we continue with this discussion, um, if a leader finds themselves in a place where they've got not the right type of culture that they would want, and perhaps even the leadership team that they would want, what would you prescribe first? I'm going to ask each of you what would your prescription be to start to change or improve on that. So, Glenn, do you want to take that, and then I'm going to let Michelle
Sure.
follow up on that.
I think everybody has been an organization where the leaders go to a retreat. We're gonna change the culture. We're going to improve it. What they don't realize as they go to that retreat and start to strategize is that they are the ones that create the culture. So a leader cannot change the culture of the organization without looking at themselves, because every day, every interaction that they have with the employees, they're setting the culture. They're setting and we talked at the last session about the model that I use is a pyramid. At the top are the results that the organization has to have. Next, you have the actions that create the results. Underneath there, you have the beliefs. And then down at the bottom, at the base, are the experiences. So ultimately, the managers, the leaders have to go down to that bottom level and create the experiences that work their way up to the beliefs, because that's what every employee has as they come to work every day. The beliefs will produce will foster the actions, and the actions will produce the results. So often leaders, when they want to change the culture, they don't go down to the everyday interactions. They go about halfway up and they say, well, we're going to change policies. We're going to change procedures. But employees don't act a particular way because of the policies and procedures. They act a particular way and they produce results based on the interactions that they have with their first line, their second line, and their third line managers.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, well, what do you think, Michelle? What would your next step be, or first step be, if they're wanting to fix those things?
I'm in absolute agreement with Glenn, but I would add that when the leaders look to evaluate, that they need to look to their own inner experiences and belief systems that impact, as Glenn said, on the organization. So if you change nothing, nothing will change. So if they're not open to looking at themselves and their own belief systems, then nothing will change. There needs to be that openness. So that's the first step, is really a survey to the leadership management team in terms of what are their beliefs? How open are they? What do they want? What vision do they want? What do they see that needs change? So there really needs to be that self-evaluation process. That's the most essential part of the process. Now, when Glenn was talking about most management and leadership teams working with the top tier of the pyramid, which are the actions and the outcomes, I'm in absolute agreement. But once you really look at your inner belief systems and what vision that you want, what mission statement you have, what core competencies, what culture you want to create, and what change is needed, you must look at alignment. There must be an alignment of those actions and the experiences and belief systems.
Makes sense. Okay, alignment. Okay, now I want to actually drill down that a little bit more. So when you hear that word alignment, I noticed you were shaking your head there, Glenn.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you when you say alignment?
I think the biggest impact that I had on my career when I realized how important alignment was. There are when you talk about alignment, uh, normally the upper management, they create priorities, high level goals. And then they take those goals, and the goals are usually related to production. Uh, in the medical area, they take a look at patient service, cost, and those sorts of things, and then they push those down to the departments or the functions that those apply to. But take a look at each manager in those different functions and areas. They don't really get involved with those high level priorities. They continue to set their priorities based on the demands of their particular department. The people outside of the department, they don't normally treat those as allies. They actually treat those people as rivals. And so, as they make their goals, their priorities, they're actually in some cases setting up barriers to the organization because they're not working together. And you take a look at employees there. Employees, the average employee, as they come to work every day, they don't think about those high level priorities. They think about what they will need in order to accomplish the work that they have to do. So to me, the solution is to tie what every is to push down those priorities down to the bottom employee, and to make those employees accountable every day. They are supposed to be supporting those high level priorities. And if we want to talk about it, I'll stop now. And but we can certainly take a look at an organization like Southwest Airlines. Every employee at Southwest Airlines know that their goal is to make the traveling experience of their customers, make it unique and pleasurable and unforgettable, so that they will come back to Southwest Airlines. Most organizations don't do that. And to me, that's one reason why Southwest Airlines is so successful year after year after year.
Absolutely.
Go for it, Michelle.
And then thank you. So what Glenn is saying that is so key is there has to be employee engagement. There really has to be a tremendous amount of buy-in and trust. Let's not forget that word that is so important. There are so many unhappy and non-trusting, a lack of trust in work environments nowadays. And the goal is really to increase the employee engagement, increase that relationship and that trust. Glenn talks about Southwest. The first thing that pops into my head is you walk into any orthopedic office, outpatient department, any orthopedic office. How many people post knee replacements, post shoulder replacements, post hip replacements are coming to see for follow-up, are standing in line? That's not Southwest in terms of what's your experience. Then you look back I'm dating myself now, into the 1960s, and you look at these drive-in restaurants when you had people serving the waitresses and waiters coming around in roller skates. Well, can't you take a simple technique and create trust and fun, and have the people, in the orthopedic offices come to the patients so they don't have to stand for 20, 30 minutes, and even before their surgery, when their pain is probably worse, and standing on bad knees. It doesn't take rocket science to look at structuring and to create a really positive customer experience. But how do you get there? Employee engagement and trust.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I noticed something here. Let me just double check on the connection here. It seems a little bit weak. So let's pause for just a moment. I am recording this as we go, but I want to make sure that they're able to get the full experience here. And just want to make sure that those of you, can you see us and hear us? Just want to make sure of that. I'm double checking my connection here. Quite a bit of drop frames here. Pausing for just a moment. Okay. Pardon me. You guys are on a roll, too. I'm curious. When we pick back up here, I'm curious as to what drew you to Southwest as being an example, because there's lots of companies out there that do things right, but I'm curious to see what is it that kind of really sets them apart. Let me just pull it up here. Okay, it looks like we are live. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, guys.
Okay.
Okay. All right, good. All right, glad you can see us. And then also Jenny Lynn, she says, yes, can now. So thank you. Thank you for that, Jenny Lynn. Appreciate that feedback. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm sorry. So, Michelle, continue on with your point.
Okay, so we're talking about trust, creating trust, and employee engagement. You know, the other thing that's so important when you create trust and employee engagement is to provide the support and the resources necessary to your staff, to the direct clinical staff that you have. You know, looking at the orientation period, the mentorship. There's such a critical shortage of good talent now, of the clinicians, that's been made worse by COVID-19, that I happen to know that some of the top organizations are re-examining and re-evaluating their onboarding process now. And somebody I was speaking to recently, they're creating what they call a nurse residency program, which means for 2 years, new staff will be oriented. And that's something that needs to take a look at. A lot of organizations, we talked about Southwest creating employee engagement, which will then work on the actions and the outcomes, and you have positive customer service. They're also an airline that happens to be on time most of the time. I happen to know in two of the airports in the country, they you get on the plane and you deplane through two separate ramps. So they've taken resources and they've employed it and they've used it and they've had a lot of training. So what are we doing in healthcare in our organizations? And that's what has to be looked at.
Great point. Excellent. So Glenn, what would you add to that about what do you think sets them apart?
Well, I think Michelle made two or three very good points. What sets them apart? And you know, Southwest is not the only organization that does a good job. Now, the big elephant in the room is Amazon, and even though some people may say that Amazon has, you know, gotten carried away and is monopolizing the area, one thing their CEO does is say that the customer is the most important thing. And every employee at Amazon realizes that. And when you go online, okay, their website is head and shoulders above almost any other because the customer is the focus. But that again is the CEO pushing down that accountability to every level of the organization. But Southwest, I think, is the prototype, and they make you feel, you know, almost everybody hate to travel. Southwest Airline makes you almost feel like you're happy to be there, and so, but it's the accountability, and the thing about accountability is this: it has to come from the top, and if customer service, patient service is the most important thing, that's the first thing that the CEO mentioned in his or her meeting. Let's talk about patients and serving them. And as the leaders go, as they step down to the different levels of the organization in their meetings, the first thing they talk about is patient service. And when you talk about being evaluated, the first thing that they get evaluated on is patient service. So it's not unique necessarily what Southwest Airline does or what Amazon does. What is unique is management making it a priority and communicating that and then following through that priority on a day-to-day basis. There's so many things that you need to do correctly to be a good company. What those organizations have said, we understand that, but the first thing you do in the morning and the first thing you do at work and the last thing you do is make sure in healthcare the patients ought to be the most important thing. The passengers ought to be the most important thing. The customers ought to be the most important thing. And that just went after you do that every day, and the leaders actually live what they say. They walk that talk. People understand that, and they know that if they're going to work at Amazon, at Southwest Airlines, they either get on board or they find another organization to work for. And I see nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Right. Okay, so you hit on something. I heard focus and focusing on the patient, the passenger, whatever the case is. That's the thing that sets apart. And then I also heard about accountability. One of the things I've heard back on accountability, and before I make this point, I just saw Teresa's comment. Good to see you, Teresa. She says, love this topic, Ross. I appreciate everything you do. And she says, as you know, we are all about culture and engagement of leadership with the staff at Suburban Hospital. And she's right. They're doing a great job over there. So thank you for watching, Teresa. So what I want to ask you about as far as accountability is concerned, one of the things that I heard back from a chief human resource officer level person is he says that, look, right now we're focusing on kind of more of the, I don't know, I'm not going to say coddling, but just kind of more of the engagement, and it's less about accountability and more about we just want to make sure we keep them happy, keep them here. So what would you say back to that? I want you to give a response to that. I'm not saying I really disagree or agree with that. I'm just giving you back what I'm hearing from another C-level HR executive.
Sure. I'll take that, and certainly I know Michelle has some thoughts on that. Okay. Let's make sure we understand what accountability is. It is not what you do when something goes wrong and you start blaming people. You hold them accountable. Accountability actually should be programmed into the whole work process, and it makes things work better. And so when you don't have accountability, then people they resist change. They often put barriers or they sabotage things. But when accountability is there, people look forward to that. They make it a part of their everyday situation, and they take ownership of it. So accountability is not getting blamed. Accountability is people stepping forward saying, I know that this needs to be done. It's part of my daily duties, and I'm going to make sure it gets done at the highest level possible because our leaders have instructed on the day-to-day basis how important it is for success of the organization. And I want to work for a successful organization, and I want to be a part of that success. And the last thing on that is, I think today, and you mentioned that, people talk about engagement or lack of engagement. I think that normally occurs at the middle and the bottom levels of the organization. People say, well, our employees are just not engaged. I think engagement is that these employees on a day-to-day basis don't see how what they do, how it impacts the success of the organization. And they're not held accountable so that what they do is always in line with the higher level responsibilities and priorities of the organization. So I say is that if you want to get rid of disengaged employees, you make what they do on a day-to-day basis count. You make sure they know that, and they will look forward to coming to work every day because they know that they have such a positive impact on the organization.
I love that. I just want to check in with the audience on that, see what they think. Yeah. Apparently so. They agree with me. Okay, so what do you think, Michelle, about accountability?
Well, accountability is very important. What I use in the consulting I do is I call it the 5 C's. Okay. And the top C is culture. And that's what we're talking about. And what comes through all that is Communication. With accountability, you need to have really good communication. And another C is clarity. So it's clear communication on what the expectations are and what would happen if this doesn't happen. What are the repercussions? What's the feedback if something doesn't go through the way we would want it to or expect it to? And the other C's that we're talking about that is so important with accountability is courage and compassion. It takes courage for people to step up and say, I'm not sure I know how to do this, or I feel really bad that I am accountable and I couldn't do this, or how could I do it better? That takes real courage and compassion. Can you go to a leader, or are the leaders compassionate that will create an environment for people to be more accountable so they can follow through on the clarity in what's been communicated? It all comes down to expectations and again, alignment. It's so important, and yet it's so easy to lose our way. And let me give you an example in terms of compassion and an out of the box, really unique situation when dealing with staff and creating loyalty in working, in being compassionate, having the courage, and being clear with accountability. And when I ran an agency, and this is going back many years ago, we were servicing the elderly in the community. It was a home care agency. And I even started a psychiatric nursing component because so many of the homebound elderly were depressed and they needed that to be addressed because they were alone, isolation. So I hired this psychiatric nurse, and she comes to me one day and she says, I'm really not happy because I really miss working with adolescents. And it's not, I enjoy working here, but I miss the patient population of working with adolescents in psych and not the elderly. And I said, okay, I totally understand. Well, I helped her find another job. I mean, what leader, what director does that nowadays? And once she found that other job, she was so impressed and so amazed that she actually sent me a nurse in return. She referred two of her friends, and I didn't even have to advertise for that opening.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so if you do the right thing and treat people compassionate, and you're clear in your communication, and there's nothing, no unwritten expectations, you can hold people accountable, but you also get that loyalty and that trust, and it goes both ways.
Makes sense. Okay. So Sharon Doctor, she says the work culture in community health clinic settings can be stressful for clinicians. Have you seen healthcare systems increase their financial investment in holding staff development trainings that focus on employee burnout and stress? So since you're talking about healthcare, Michelle, why don't you start, and then Glenn can add to that.
Okay, I'd be happy to. So if you can repeat the last part of it, have we seen that that these institutions have increased their
It says, have you
increase?
seen healthcare systems increase their financial investment in holding staff development trainings that focus on employee burnout and stress?
Okay, so that's a really great question. And I think that comes back to how engaged the leadership is with the staff. And it really comes back to, some environments hold town hall meetings. They create feedback loops so that they stay engaged with the needs of the staff. And if they're aware that there's burnout, they do that. Unfortunately, my exposure, I've come in when there's a lot of crisis situations, and I haven't seen that, but that's something that is a positive thing to do, to keep that employee engagement. Take surveys from time to time on your staff. Where are they? Why? And in HR, and many institutions are accredited, and many accreditation requirements require exit interviews. people think it's a waste of time. People think, oh, there is so much anger involved. There's all these emotions tied to exit interviews. But the real purpose of an exit interview is to get feedback so you understand what's going on with your staff. I've never really seen the true intention of exit interviews. It's rare, I should say. It's rare out there. So there are, yes, to answer your question, yes, there are um, organizations that do it, but not enough.
Good points. How about you, Glenn?
I I think that training is always important. Uh, in my experience, though, I've seen leaders follow training as the solution to any kind of problem that you have. I think training is important, but let's make sure we understand what problems it will solve. If an employee don't know how to do the job as well as they should, training will help. If an employee needs certain skills in order to do the job, training will help. But if the employee has a bad attitude, if an employee doesn't know what they do, what they should be doing every day, if they don't have the tools of the job, if they don't have the support around them, training will not solve anything other than use money and funds that could be used in much better ways. So training is a tool to be used in conjunction with a lot of other tools. And again, management should really take a look at some strategic actions rather than just tactical. A tactical action, for example, is we have trouble retaining nurses, so we're going to give them a bump up in their salary, or we're going to give them a bonus to hire them. That's not the problem in most cases, is there? Certainly, everybody would like to get more money, but the reason why you have turnover and poor retention is much more. It's much more elaborate and comprehensive than what you can do with just one tactic. So I would recommend that they take a look at the pulse of the organization. Management, again, take a look at what they do on a day-to-day basis. And they then should take the funds that they have, because certainly all organizations limited to their funds. They should focus on the things that have the biggest impact, not only in a part of the organization, but in the entire organization. And one more thing, let's not fool ourselves. Changing the culture is a long-term process. Most managers want to do it next year or next quarter. It takes years and years to form your culture. It will take years and years of dedicated and focused action to change your culture and to reinforce that. And the bad thing about it is that most upper management don't want to spend the time or the effort. They like solutions that are quick and dirty so that they can move on to something else.
And the reverse is true. You didn't get to a bad situation overnight either.
That's right.
It's been
That's
there
right.
festering for a really long time. So
Yeah, that's
they're not,
true.
yeah.
So one thing I want to just add on to that, and I can see how it had some cases can exacerbate the problem, is that most leaders, executive leaders, are evaluated on a quarterly or an annual basis. So
Yes.
they want
Yes.
things that will help to fix things in a quarterly or an annual basis. And culture is just not something, like you said, moves that quickly. So it starts to get out of the purview of the leaders because it doesn't fix things quick enough. They
But
may
let's
not be
not,
around long enough
that's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's true.
But let's not lose sight on the fact that there are measurable goals along the way. That can
Okay.
be shown, and
Yes.
there are ways to evidence measurement in the direction you want to go in. And so I don't, while your statement is correct, I don't want the
Yeah.
audience or anybody to think that it's unattainable.
Okay, good point. Thank you for that. In fact,
Yeah.
let me just, speaking
That's
about the
true.
audience, I just want to see what the audience thinks about what you just mentioned there. And apparently they agree. Very good. So let's take our water break. We didn't do our water break yet. There's your water.
Cheers.
Okay, I have a question for you. And those who are watching, I have a question. All right. So this is kind of a fun question. If you were going to be the backup singer for any band, what would it be? What band would it be?
Wow.
Well, I can answer that one.
Go for it.
My favorite band has always been Earth, Wind, and Fire. Okay,
Ooh, I
they
like
they
that.
have a vibe that just, I mean, it crosses all demographics, it crosses all age groups, because people today are still discovering Earth, Wind, and Fire. Their choreography is great. Okay, their instrument playing is cool. And if you ever been to a concert, and I was lucky enough to attend one, is they have great special effects and everything. So I would love to be a backup singer. Now I can't sing, so I will turn off my mic. But
You be looking
I
real
would
good doing all
love
the dance moves.
I'll do dance moves. I would love just being part of the experience.
That sounds good. Okay, so before we go to Michelle, and by the way, in the comments, those who are watching, I want you to tell me the same thing. Don't be shy. Let us know if you could be a backup singer for any band. Doesn't matter if you can sing or not. Which one would it be? Okay, but Glenn, what's your favorite? What's
Yes.
your favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire song?
Well, there's a slow one called Reasons.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. I like that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then a fast one is September.
Oh, September's
I
good.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
I mean they've just, and of course they're the leader of the group has passed away.
Yes.
Maurice White,
Yeah.
and he had just a presence about himself, and he wrote a lot of the songs and so forth. It's just and of course they have their other lead singer is Philip Bailey, who has
Yeah.
one of the highest soprano voices you're
Yeah.
going to get, and they just make great music and great writing together. I could listen to their music all day long.
Good stuff. And so when you say Maurice White, so many of their songs, he's the lead singer. Another one you made me think as far as
Yeah,
slow is "Can't Hide Love," and then John Legend,
yeah.
he redid it the other day, other year. It was so good. Okay, but we can talk about that all day. But Michelle, who would you be a backup singer for? And I want to see if anybody in the comments is brave enough to tell
That
us.
stumped me. I don't bands. I don't, I know artists, but I don't necessarily recall bands.
Okay, artists. How
But
about artists? Who would you be a
yeah,
backup singer for?
so the first person that popped into my head, I don't know, is I love Bette Midler. And
Oh,
she and not that her backup is so skilled in singing, she puts on skits that are more comedic. They have they have
Yeah.
statements and they're entertainment, but there's comedy. And so I think of that because I like to use humor in work environments. And I think it's a good skill in knowing when to use humor in dealing with people. And she does that so well.
okay. Favorite Bette Midler song?
Oh, wow. There's quite a few of them, but the first thing that pops into my mind is Wind Beneath Your
Oh
Wings.
yes, that's a beautiful, beautiful song.
Great
Beautiful
song.
song.
Great
Okay,
song.
so now we had a little fun with that, which is good. Do you think that companies bring fun in enough with their culture or their work environment? Because now that a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us do work from home now that didn't work from home before. Um, how do we kind of bring the fun, or should we bring the fun? So Michelle, you can start with that, and then Glenn, I want you to follow up with it. How much should fun play into this whole thing?
We need fun. We need definitely a lot more fun. We've all been around a number of years, and there used to be pre-COVID and a long time ago, you go to the water cooler and you talk about what's going on with politics or the environment and jokes and what's going on. And then over the decades, somewhere along the line with the laws in sexual harassment at the workplace, with the polarization of politics, with so many issues being so volatile, people are afraid to discuss anything. And they're afraid to make jokes because of the retaliation of being inappropriately accused of something. I mean, literally, but this is only 2 years ago, right before COVID, maybe 2.5. Actually, it's almost 3 now. Um, I was out in Minnesota, and I'm walking into the building of the agency I was representing, and the male nurse, and I was wearing a skirt. I dropped something, and a male nurse was entering behind me, and he steps in front of me, and he bends down to pick it up for me, and he says to me as he's bending, "Please, ma'am, don't misunderstand what I'm doing. I'm not bending to look under your skirt. I'm just picking this up for you." And I thought and I thanked him, and I thought to myself, what a horrible, horrible work environment that people have to be on guard all the time. Where's the levity and the humor that we need? Absolutely, and then with Zoom, the only thing that comes to my mind are the little facial type of uh, masks that you can wear
Oh,
when you're on
right.
a Zoom. You can get rabbit ears, you can get the cat
Yeah.
nose. We need to mix it up and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe you make it maybe one Zoom meeting you make it required. You have to pick one of those little things to put on
Yeah.
your face for that for at least for a little while. Maybe not the whole meeting, but just for a little while. Pick your favorite one. I don't know.
Or joke of the meeting or something.
Yeah.
I agree, it's really lacking. We've gotten, while we're doing well, and we're serving the environment by trying to protect everybody because of these sexual harassment policies, and trying to be all inclusive and respectful. I'm not minimizing that. That is very
Right.
important. But there needs to be a happy medium, and I think we've lost something along the way.
Okay, now before you answer, Glenn, thank you. I appreciate that. Jenny Lynn Packham, she says pets in home offices can be fun. Yes, that's
Yes.
a good point.
Yes.
Okay,
I have two sitting right here.
okay, yeah. Show us, show and tell. Feel free and show
Oh
us
my
one of them.
goodness.
Okay,
Let's
then we're gonna
see.
go to Glenn while you're doing that. So,
Come
Glenn,
here.
what's your thoughts on this about bringing more fun into the workplace?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think that's a great question. Uh, let me make a couple of points. Number one is that humor is so very important to every aspect of our relationships. Couples need to joke more, okay? And certainly at work. I've taught though a number of classes on harassment and that sort of thing. Invariably, there you.
We have a new guest on the show.
Okay, sure. But invariably, somebody will ask in my classes, they will make a comment similar to what Michelle was talking about. I can't say this because it's going to offend somebody. And I taught class about hugging, about physical contact. And people came up to me afterwards, oh, well, you can't hug. I said that let's not fool ourselves. People know an appropriate hug, and people understand what an inappropriate hug is. So sexual harassment and those sort of things are not talking about those kind of things. People know when they are harassing people, and it has to do with power, as we all know. And it also has to do with disrespect. So as long as you respect your fellow workers in there, you can certainly use humor, and the best humor, of course, is against yourself. Okay, so and when it comes to humor, let's not forget about Southwest Airlines. Okay, they
Yeah.
have perfected
Yes.
they have perfected the when you're getting ready to take off. and you go over the safety precautions.
Yeah,
They have, I mean, they could go on the road with a lot of theirs.
yeah,
And, and the thing about it, they trust their employees enough to know to make the determination about how far they can go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been on a number of flights, and invariably the person gets up there, and before you know it, you are rolling in the seats. But you will remember what they're talking about. So
Yes.
yes, humor is so very important. It eases people, and it helps people to focus on what they really are supposed to be doing.
Okay.
you said something really important. They trust their employees
Yes.
to know
Yeah,
the
Yes.
that's
limit.
big.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay,
It's true.
so something just crossed my mind though. I do want to address this because the United States is much more of a melting pot than ever. And I don't know whether you're watching this from another country. You can let us know if it's the same in your country. But as we've had more folks coming from different countries, that's different cultures, where maybe they're from a culture that you just do not hug. Period. You just, I mean, unless you're like my
Sure.
mom or something like that,
Sure.
you don't hug me. And then you have other cultures where we hug everybody. You know, it's not, and it's not,
Yes.
there's nothing improper about it. This is just how we do it. So when we're talking about culture of the organization, we also have to bring in the culture of the individual of where they're coming from. So
Yes.
is this a situation where the person needs to conform to the culture of the organization? Because, you know, at this company, we hug over here. Or is it a situation where the company needs to be more cognizant of the individual members of the organization to adjust to them? What direction should we go first? Michelle, I will let you take that first, and then we'll come back to Glenn. Okay.
Absolutely. Very, very good point. I believe that if the company is looking for employee engagement and trust, and to create that culture of trust and engagement that will lead to increased productivity and improved patient outcomes, then the employer needs to be respectful of the cultural diversity and the cultural competencies of the staff. And that goes back to training in terms of in in healthcare, there are trainings about cultural competencies, but it's so often focused on the patients. And I don't mean to minimize that. That is very, very important. But let's look at the staff in terms of how they're communicating. And like you said, physical space. I know for a fact Asians have, in terms of physical space, can be very close together. Other cultures, they can be, you if you're too close, it's uncomfortable. You're in a zone of discomfort. As you mentioned before, hugging would not be as appropriate. Um, so there definitely has to be more of a focus on cultural competencies of management and in terms of staff and how it impacts patient care as well.
Good point. What about you, Glenn?
Yes, I think Michelle makes some great points about the organization really uh, making cultural competency a very important element. Uh, when it comes to hugging, I think that's a great subject to talk about in the workplace. Uh, you have you have the organizations, uh, their policy or their concern about hugging, but you have individually. And I think that you don't hug somebody that you're not close to, you don't have that relationship with. So I would say, for the most part, people know who they can hug and they know who they can't hug. But the operative term, which I think is the most one of the most important terms in any organization, is respect.
Yes.
If you respect yourself, if you respect your coworkers, a lot of the things that we do investigations about harassment, discrimination, that sort of thing. If you respect people, those sort of things don't come up, and you don't go and hug somebody who you are not. You don't have that kind of relationship. You can tell whether or not somebody is want to receive your hug. So you have to get to know people, as Michelle said. You have to respect differences in diversity and national, personal differences, that sort of thing. And if you if you don't know whether or not you should hug, you probably already answered that question. You shouldn't.
That's probably pretty. That's a pretty wise statement, my man. Because yeah, if you're wondering about it, maybe you just shouldn't do it. That way, you won't get in any trouble.
That's true. That's true.
But I like the point where you made about you need to get to know the person, because I've had that personal experience, because I come up in a culture where that we did hug quite a bit, as people
Sure.
right, people and well,
Yep.
and
Yep.
or maybe you haven't seen them in a long time and that sort of thing. And so I've made it a point to actually ask the person, now I come from a culture of hugging. Is that something you're good with? I'm just out
Sure.
front and asking them. They can just tell me
No,
no, and
that's
I'm not
great.
offended, no problem. And that's worked out pretty
That's
well for
great.
me, because I used to get there were a couple times I did get embarrassed because I could tell a person was uncomfortable. So
Yeah, well,
I
that's
always try and read the room.
Yeah.
well, asking is being respectful.
Yeah. It certainly is. Certainly is.
Yeah. Okay. So we're wrapping up here. This is the end of the hour. I can't believe how quickly it's passed. What last piece of advice would you like to leave with the folks? We'll start with you, Michelle, along with how they should contact you, and then Glenn, you can finish us up. Last piece of advice and how folks should contact you.
Thank you. Okay. So just to let people know, so really what I focus in on is I help healthcare executives retain staff and increase profits by up to 15% within 6 months using the Champion Pathway to Leadership solution. And you can contact me through LinkedIn. I have my contact information also on my profile page with a phone number or email address, or just through LinkedIn, directly through LinkedIn. But I want to leave people with trust each other, treat each other well, treat each other nicely, respect one another, have the courage and have the compassion to work with your fellow coworker, and approach your leader, approach leadership if you're not leadership yourself, and inquire about what can be done if you see things that need to be acted on.
Very good. That's excellent. Okay, we do have you tagged as well, so they'll be able
Thank
to connect with you on the posting as well. Okay, how about you, Glenn?
Well, first of all, this is our second broadcast, and I've enjoyed both of them. So thank you for inviting me to come over, and it's been a pleasure working with Michelle and answering these questions. What I have over 40 years of experience in human resources. The last 20, though, to me have been much more exciting than the first 20. The last 20, I've realized that as a traditional HR person, I limited myself. I was called on when management perceived we had a problem in talent acquisition or employee relations, that sort of thing. But they put me in a silo, either as a generalist or a specialist, and they would perceive that they had a problem before in that particular area only before they contacted me. I soon realized that to be successful as a HR person and also as a consultant, you have to deal with performance, not a particular silo of a tactical, well, we need to hire people differently, we need to discipline people differently. And what we've been talking about really is performance. How can we as an organization perform better? And that's what I do. I work with companies who feel like they're not getting the production they should. They're not, their customer service or patient service is not what it is. I work with them on strategic issues. So if an organization wants to change a policy or procedure, I'm probably not the person that they should call. But if they want to have an impact on the bottom line, make more money, increase their market share, increase patient service so that people will come back to them, then I can help them from a strategic point of view because I deal with the performance of the organization. And I certainly would appreciate anything that I can do to help.
Well, we appreciate both of you. Yes, that sounds great. I'm just gonna double check and see what kind of response we're getting back from the audience today. We had such a great group of commenters today, and yes, they certainly enjoyed the session today as well. So we really appreciate both of you being on today. Thank you.
That's always great, Rollins. I love that.
But my audience is wonderful, and they're just so wonderful. They come through every time.
Love it.
Folks in the comments, let us know what you enjoyed about today. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like or celebrate. In fact, just hit the celebrate button because today was so good. Hit the little clap button on there for us. Let us know what you thought, and let us know, what resonated with you. What thoughts did you have? Yes, thank you. So what we'll do is we'll sign off for now, everyone. I want you guys to stay on for just a moment. Let's say bye, everyone. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, when I see our waving hands, I'll know it's okay to do it here. Let's see. Yeah, you guys were great.
It was fun.
It was.
Absolutely.
And Rollins, as usual, you always do a fantastic job.
He does.
Doesn't he?
Oh wow! Thank you so much.
He's kind of like a